I'd like to call to order the Plan Commission meeting for June 6th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Attendance roll call.
Commissioner Graff.
Here.
Commissioner Oliver. Alderman Kubacki.
Here.
Commissioner Kazana.
Here.
Commissioner Buckmaster. Commissioner Bartlett.
Here.
Mayor Pefalski.
Present.
Clarence Chesbetowski.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Statement of public notice.
The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on Friday, June 2nd.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from May 2nd, 2023.
Move to approve.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Public hearing. A public hearing for a conditional use grant in accordance with the Muskego zoning ordinance for the purposes of allowing existing accessory structures to be deemed rustic structures on the Huron property located at S99 West 20523 Parker Drive, tax key number 2280.999.021. Adam?
Yeah, I'll kind of go over the supplement stuff for this. So the petitioner, Brian Wren, is requesting that a couple of the existing older barns on his property, 2 buildings specifically, be deemed a rustic structure. As part of Mr. Wren doing a land division that occurred over the last year or two, the existing property was divided into a total of 7 newer lots. There were 4 lots that were divided a few years ago, and then an additional 7 that were divided more recently. 6 of those are being sold for new home sites, and the 7th contains the original farmhouse, and all the outbuildings are all kind of clustered together on one part of the site. Mr. Wren is keeping that 7th lot. So right now, that when you look at the survey that's up on the screen in the packets, there's actually kind of 4 buildings that are actually attached that we kind of refer to as like the main barn. And those 4 parts of the building total about 8,223 square feet. And like we said, we refer to those as the main barn, as they're kind of pieces that form a whole. There's also a building that's listed as garage, also known as the grain house, which is 656 square feet. Those are the 2 that are being looked at as deemed rustic structures. Then there's an Eastern barn that's 3797 square footage, and a shed that's 319 square feet. So the total square footage of all those buildings totals 12,995 square feet. Based on the size of Mr. Wren's new lot, after it's been split, it's about 4.8 acres. And normally they're only allowed 2% of the lot size, which would limit this property to just under 4,200 square feet, 4,196 square feet. This would mean that the proposed buildings, if all 4 main buildings are kept, that would exceed the allowed limit by 8,798.28 square feet. In this case, then, the applicant is asking that those first 2 buildings, the large barn and the grain house or garage building, both be deemed rustic structures. And basically what rustic structures are is the zoning ordinance has a provision, and this was originally put in the plan in an effort to preserve old barns in the city. So if an older barn in the city has decent, bones to it, if it's not falling apart and dilapidated, but someone wants to do something where they want it to be exempt from setbacks, offsets, size limitations, open space, things like that, they're allowed to make a request in front of the Plan Commission for the rustic structure designation. So the way the process reads is the first step is they have to go to the Park and Conservation Committee, which they did in April. Park and Conservation Commission voted to approve the rustic structure recommendation on a vote of 4-1. That then now led to this public hearing, which is about to happen tonight. And then after the public hearing, the Plan Commission will discuss and see if they feel so appropriately fit to grant a conditional use grant for the rustic structure. Basically, what the code states when it comes to rustic structures, it defines a rustic structure as any permanent accessory structure or building which is distinctly set apart or unique from other structures and buildings due to its construction techniques, materials, age, local historic significance or design, and characteristics of past agricultural practices or rural life, whether presently utilized or not for agricultural practice, and which is structurally safe at the time the conditional use grant is applied for and during the duration of the conditional use. So really, the Plan Commission has to decide if they feel that the buildings that are being requested by Mr. Rinn meet that characteristic, and if they feel a rustic structure designation is appropriate on this property. This section of the code is unique in the sense that we only have a handful of buildings in the city that have asked for it. This might be number 3 or 4, maybe 5. So there's not a ton of them, but we have had a few that have been granted. And like I said, they're buildings that have historic character, but are still in decent shape. In the case of this property, our inspectors were out there very recently. They did say that overall the structure of the buildings that are deemed rustic structures do seem safe. There was no structural concerns. There were a few minor things that would have to be adjusted if this would get approved, like a few broken windows and some small gaps in boards, I think that would maybe, or some rotting boards that would have to be replaced. But overall, that's very minimal. And if this were to be approved, we would just make sure those items get replaced. One thing we just want to reiterate on this is, like I said, the property is, allowed to consume the 2% of the total lot size, which puts them at about that 4,200 square feet. They're asking for, to be over that by about 3 times, to be about 80, to be over the limit by about 8,800 square feet, which would exceed that 2%. But if the rustic structure is granted, then that 2% really doesn't matter. The applicant did include in their packet all the details behind their reasoning for this request, and they'll be here to answer questions tonight.
Thank you. Anyone who would like to be heard on this item, either for or against, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address. And I just want to remind people as he's walking up that this is a public hearing and the conversation is one way. So we just listen. We cannot talk back and forth.
Is my mic on there?
It should be on.
Yeah.
You can hear me. Okay, Harold back. I moved to Muskego 92 years ago. And I was pretty small at that time. But I never dreamt I'd be coming to a public hearing that somebody would want to tear down a barn in excellent condition. And it is in excellent condition, we all know that. It's used for agriculture and is needed to keep a family agriculture operation in Muskego. It helps keep the community in remembrance of what made our city so great. The property has been kept looking very good as a family-owned operation. Thank you for your consideration of the reasons we should try to keep some agriculture in our community and to help families maintain this agriculture operation. It really would be a sin to make anyone tear a barn down in excellent condition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm George Petropoulos. I live directly behind the farm on Kelsey. I'd like you guys to consider not keeping it. Brian is known since the beginning that he was over the square footage by quite a bit, 13,000 square feet, which 8,000 some square feet over that limit. I live on 16 acres directly behind him. It's 2 parcels that I still continue to farm. I do corn and beans for the King family. It's my understanding they're no longer farming there. They're leaving the property. They've done everything they can to keep that farm.
Try to address.
I want to address the audience too, because it's important. Thanks, Mayor. But I really feel that living there, and I'm speaking for a bunch of neighbors that couldn't make it tonight, and they said I could state their names. The Radishes that are next to me, they're on 7.65 acres. The Nakoviches that are next to me at 7.65 acres. And I own the 2 lots directly behind the farm that we're talking about. The farm is updated. It's not historical. It has like fiberglass windows, a steel roof. I mean, there's other farms and other barns that are in the same condition, if not better, in the city. I'm not against farming. I do it. I have a farm. I operate a farm. The Kings help me do that. Kelly helps me with that. I've been doing it since 2003 when I was a soldier in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've owned this land. And I've kept it that way, and I've promised to keep it that way. I feel deeply that this should be considered as a no-go, and we should not allow it to stay. The rules are the rules. I built a 4,000 square foot outbuilding and followed the rules. I can't have a 42-foot RV diesel pusher in my yard plugged in without someone calling the police. It's not fair. It's not right. We need to follow the rules. We knew the rules when we started this project. It's not fair. I don't want to look outside my building. Put it to perspective. The two projects is 11 outbuildings, or even 10, let's say. You build 10 houses, and then you build 10 outbuildings. That's 20 some buildings that are going to be behind my property that I have to look out of my our farm. And outside my bedroom window, I have to see all these houses being put in on flagpole lots so we can get the maximum number of houses back there. But then every one of those people are eligible to put up a pole barn. So it's not just 10 houses, it's 20 potentially. And then on top of it, the farm. I'd much rather keep the farm than the houses. If you don't want to keep it that way, then get rid of a couple of the lots. Follow the rules. If it's 2%, it's 2%. I've lived through the rules. I've fought with the rules. I've been in front of this commission before when I built. I have a lot of money invested in Muskego, and I continue to invest money in Muskego. My neighbors and I are completely against this. It's not fair to us. Otherwise, you're going to see me come back and ask you to violate the rules for my property. And I promise you I will be back. And I will do something on my acreage right next door to it and ask you for help to get over my 2%, and I'll do it. And I'll do it really well. My barns are spray foamed. My barns are heated and air conditioned. What else do you want? I don't think it's fair. And I think you should, and I respect the gentleman that is a farmer and does a lot of things for our community, but there's other barns in the community that are much more rustic than this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else? What?
Good afternoon. I live at S98W1027. I live right across the street from the barns.
Name?
Vance Rankowitz.
Okay, thanks.
And I moved out there because we did like the barn feel. You know, we do have smaller lots. We aren't a big farm. But we wake up every day, we see the barn, we enjoy it. I have been in it. I've seen all the big timbers from when it was built, how many years ago? I guess me and my family do not see a reason to tear that barn down in the condition it is in. It seems well upkept, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Dale Butenhoff. I live at S98-20620. I live directly across the street from these barns. And when we moved in 2 years ago, one of those things that we liked about the area was the farm, field, country living type of atmosphere. And we think those barns give us that, and we like looking at them, and we have no problems with those being there. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Hi, Butch Haida, South 98 West 21184 Parker Drive. I believe those barns are in excellent condition. It would be a sin to tear them down. Barns like that are far and few between in the area. I grew up from in front of a farm as a kid in Franklin, and I admired the barn my whole life. It was my dream to have a farm with nice buildings on it and have animals. But Brian takes good care of his buildings and has always been maintaining his property well. And I think the barn should stay, and it's just my personal opinion. So I don't think people have the right to judge people by what they have. You know, if he wants to have his barns, I think he should have them. It's my personal opinion. I think it adds to the rural area, and it's just what I think. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor, one thing I forgot to mention, I'll throw in quick, is that in front of the commissioners is a document from the applicant that we received this afternoon that does provide the names of various neighbors on that street. And so their signatures and names are on there of people that were in favor of it, some of which spoke today. But that's in front of you guys for your review if you want to see it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to be heard on this matter?
Well, I'm the applicant. I'm Brian Rinn. I own the the barns. I know a few people I have talked to before. Adam, obviously, you know me and stuff. I'm probably a little bit too passionate about it, but that's why I'm here today. I care very much about my property. I care about the history. And what I believe the history has a lot to do with is not only that it's that barn showed that we had all the agriculture and the dairy cows. We got stanchions in there. We got grain houses, and every little compartment is. Some of those are wrapped into that building one, the very large building. An old milk house, a new milk house, a grain house was the separate one out in front, and the freestall bar. The main barn has the stanchions in it. They all tell the story. It's like if you take half of them down or something like that or whatever, it rips apart the story. I've done everything I can in the last 23 years, and believe me, when I got there, Wayne Salentine is most every one of you know who he is, and I'm sure the people here do too. He's on the back side of this wall as the mayor of Muskego from 1982 to 93 for 11 years. While he lived at that place, he was doing farming, and he grew up there. Day one, 1936, he's born. I think that's got some historical significance. So when I got it, Wayne he had left in about 96. I'm not going to go too much into the history thing of this, but it is all in the packet. But he left there on 96. He built the house, he rented it out, and then eventually sold it to me in 2000. The barns needed some work. He told me that. I love the house. It was very nice and stuff, but he says, here you go. You're going to keep those buildings. You're going to keep the farmer here and everything else, as I did per 23 years of being there. The farmer, we had the cows the whole time. And not to bring you into it, Adam, but you had mentioned that, it doesn't matter what they're used for now. We're talking about rustic structure. But they are going to be used for that. That's as long as the Kings need it until, say, Jack King, but then Mark King is building the parlor, which you guys all know that. Whenever he wants to go over there with all the cows, I would love to, have my barn available for him. It's all in functional condition. When the inspector came just a few days ago on Friday, I told him, come here, let me show you this. Let me show you that. Let me show you this. The rotted barn pieces, I told him about. It was a couple face pieces that were some plywood because I knew this day would come. I'm hoping I can put on new wood and make it perfect on the outside. Like Wayne said, back in, in 2000, you're going to have to repair and do all these things. I didn't have that kind of money. I was 30-some years old. I work. Put the big barn roof on there, made it safe, decent, just draw it all the step at a time pieces here and there to make it safe and decent and structurally sound. A couple of the barn windows are out. We got cows. Actually, they bump into them. We got, little things in front of them. You got to replace them occasionally. That's what the inspector saw as far as that. And you bet I'd have no problem making sure that that's right too as well. It's, as George mentioned, it's over the square footage. But that's why I believe when it goes into rustic structure zoning, it has historical significance. I believe Wayne Salentine, he was an awesome guy. I mean, I can't say enough about him because he showed me so much and taught me so much. And here's my chance to talk a little bit too, just a little. But with Wayne Salentine, when he would come over, they planted all the stuff in the back. They planted some pears trees and this and that. He would say, hey, Arlene wants to use some pears. Can he get some pears from the tree? I says, okay, no problem. And this is going somewhere with a historical rustic structure. Okay. He said, do you mind if I grab them? I says, you bet. You can take the whole tree's worth. Get them out of here. They're falling on the ground. But you're going to have to do me one favor. I need you to sit down. I want you to talk to me for 2 or 3 hours. He laughed. He chuckled, right? But I learned everything that he did all that time. I can tell a good story from everything that I've heard, and I put it in my head every time I talk to him to confirm on details. And it's neat because he told me about growing up as a kid, and he was in and out of that barn, and his parents, and when they ran the phone line over to that main barn where this, the rustic structure is. So I guess my point is we're talking about Wayne Salentine being our mayor, as well as historically what those barns have been through. They're upright, they're strong. When they go over the square footage rule, rules are rules. I heard that, I get it. But when it goes into rustic structure, I think people should be allowed to say, well, it is over. According to what I heard about rustic structure, we're not really looking at a square footage rule, and obviously they're good size, so you want to consider that. But when you do that and they really do qualify and they got good reasoning for being up, I think it shows the materials being used. For sure, you can see the original woods in there. In the paperwork that you have, I don't know if you want to put them, if you can put up there or not, but inside the barns, the first section of barn is actually tree trunks that were split in half. Those were in the late 1800s, they were put in there. The bark is still on it. That portion of the barn, there's no nails into assembling the framework. They're all dowels and pins. You can see that upstairs. It looks so awesome. Once you take it down, it's gone. Nobody's going to rebuild anything like that. You can look in history books. I want to show my family. I'm not going to be here forever. I'm 59 this year. But I would like whoever, my daughter takes over, my son, she got horses. I want her to be able to use that. Cows, people can, breed them for beef or whatever, So me being so passionate about it, I kept them up. They're strong, they're decent, they show the historic value, they have the historic materials used in them. I think they qualify very much, and I ask that you allow that the barns stay. And again, there's the one big one with a lot of pieces there, but it tells that story. If any one of you came out there, I'd be more than happy to walk you through and show you how it's a story and what everything was used for. So, and I only know that from the history and talking with Wayne Celatine. So I'd love to write up further something about it and say, this is the barn where it happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry about the long one, but I had a little bit more to say.
Would anyone else like to be heard in this matter? Anyone? Once? I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you. This will be discussed later in the agenda. Moving on to consent business, Resolution PC 041-2023, approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks at Walmart located on Westmoreland Road, tax key number 2169.999.003. Resolution PC 042-2023, approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks at Pick and Save located on Janesville Road, tax key number 2199.999.065. Resolution PC 043-2023, approval of a third accessory structure for Trevor Bach located at West 182 South 6578 Garnett Drive, tax key number 2174948001. Resolution PC 044-2023, approval of a metal accessory building for Ronald Graham located at West 156 South 7984 Audrey Court, tax key number 2217.999.010.
Move to approve and gross.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. There is no old business for consideration. New business for consideration. Resolution PC 033-2023, approval of a rustic structure designation for Brian Wren located at South 99 West 20523 Parker Drive, tax key number 2280999021. Need a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion. Adam, do you want to add anything?
I don't really have anything else to add. I mean, I covered it mostly at the beginning and.
Anything about public hearing you want
to? These are unique ones, like I said, because there's not, a lot of things in the code are black and white, like a setback or offset. You meet it or you don't. This is definitely a different scenario because there's a little more subjectivity to it realistically. I think the biggest thing that the Plan Commission has to do is do they believe that definition is met? The code criteria has three things. It basically says the building had to existed prior to January 1st of 2002. There's no question that is met. It has to go through Park and Conservation Committee, which it did. And the third thing is basically the Plan Commission needs to find that the request meets that definition, which was read about, being different and, the historic significance and different things like that. So Really up to the plan commission to see what they think here. I mean, options could be anything from proving it as proposed, which would be, you know, the non-rustic buildings and the 2 rustic ones all remaining. There could be, you know, a hybrid of some rustic, some regular remaining. There's really endless options of what the plan commission could do with this decision.
I understand that in the past, we have approved rustic buildings in excess of 2%, but only by a fractional amount, correct?
Yeah, I don't have exact numbers, but they weren't in the hundreds of percent. You know, they probably would have been in the 2-digit percents at most, and they weren't really significant. In most of the cases that I can remember, and I did do a little due diligence on this before it went to Park and Conservation, some of the ones I recall were things where like the only outbuilding was the rustic structure, and they wanted to keep that one building up. Or I think in one case there was maybe 2 buildings and one was really small and the rustic structure put them over and they allowed them to keep that rustic structure. So this is the first time we've heard a request that involved multiple buildings staying and multiple buildings having rustic structure designation potential. So it's different in that sense, but the code doesn't limit how many can or can't be deemed rustic or how many can or can't be there. Like I said, when you deemed a rustic structure, if it would be granted, it basically makes those rustic buildings exempt from a bunch of the zoning restrictions.
So when this property was subdivided and reclassified, Mr. Wren knew that going in, that there was an excess amount of buildings on this last site, correct?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the first things whenever we talk with someone. So we've talked with Mr. Wren many times throughout the development. And then he had, from when his CSM was recorded, which I think was late in the fall of the past year, so the land has already been split, the land around it. They were given 1 year to either get the rustic structure designation or ultimately remove them. So by this upcoming fall, they either have to have one of those 2 options completed.
So how many lots were created out of this parcel?
7 total on the most recent division that was done at the end of last year, number 7 being the barn property, so 6 new vacant lots. And then kind of on the parent parcel, there was 4 that were done maybe a decade ago or so, but same land that Mr. Wren owned. Mm-hmm. So you could say 10 vacant lots over the last 10, 15 years, and then 1 for the barn property.
So rather than this being a farm parcel, it's a subdivision with large lots, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, I would say that with the exception of the barn lot where the house and stuff is right now, even though that lot's down to, I think it's 4.8 acres.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could ask, if you raise the buildings for the moment, he could still have, as the gentleman indicated, 10 houses, 10 outbuildings, correct? Or multiple?
So what I would say is there's 7 vacant lots left. 6 is part of the most recent division, 1 that's part of the old division. Those lots all could eventually have a home with associate outbuildings on them.
And if we designate rustic, there can still be that number of buildings.
Yeah, what happens on this property with the rustic has no bearing on what happens on the others. They're unrelated.
The discussion of whether or not we raise it and there's multiple buildings is kind of a moot point, if I'm understanding.
Yeah, the other lots can still have their buildings regardless of what happens here.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a little bit more on the history, if you would. So we see this larger lot subdivided into, Adam, how many did you say?
Like I said, I think there were 7 technically as part of this.
Not a decade ago, but.
Yeah, 7 recently.
And they were adjacent to this property?
Yeah, they're all, picture one big parent parcel, and that was been puzzled out.
So the decision at that point, and how long did you say it was, the fall of last year?
That's when it was finalized and recorded.
There was a huge assumption at that point made by the gentleman that owns the property.
Yeah.
He has 2 choices. He has to gain advantage for the rustic buildings, or he has to remove them, okay? So he was fully aware of that scenario going back in the fall when he chose to subdivide. I assume that was his property he subdivided.
Correct. Yeah.
So from my perspective, I look at that and said, he's really exercised a decision at that point to maximize the amount of lots he can sell as compared to retaining 14 acres and guaranteeing that these buildings are retained regardless of the decision that's now happening a year later. So is that true? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can't put myself in their head, but
Yeah,
that's the outcome,
but
I guess,
you
yeah.
know, in not listening to the statements made earlier tonight, but reading the package, that was the initial response I had, which was, boy, he put a lot on the line if he felt so strongly about the buildings. He put a lot on the line a year ago associated with this decision. He was putting those buildings up for grabs at that point. And now he wants a statement from us later. And I'm very sympathetic to an older building. I love those styles and architecture. But City of Muskego is not going to appreciate it one way or the other, how they were built, honestly. Unless you made them in a museum piece, no one's going to know. Got a metal roof on them, put all the windows in. It's great that they're a functioning farm, but it's really not a farm anymore. It's just outbuildings. And they're wonderfully made, but they're still outbuildings.
I could see exceeding the guidelines by 20-25%, but seems to be excessive to me.
Having said that, there are 39 signatures of people that are affected in that community that would like to see the buildings up. I think that says a lot. I'm in the building trade, and all I do is new stuff. I like to see some older buildings, and so do 39 other people in the neighborhood.
I guess I understand that, but I also take a look at the history. And like was said, those buildings were on the line when the decision was made to subdivide that property.
Let's walk through the buildings that are on the property. Okay, so we have I'm looking at this. So we have
So kind of the large L-shaped one,
this one here.
yeah.
What about this little corner thing?
They're attached like at the corner, so that's counted as part of that main one. So that little building in the corner is like 500 square feet or something, but they are connected. So that L shape, that little bar in the corner, and technically the two silos, even though the survey doesn't quite clearly show those silos being connected, when you look at the photos, there is a passage that connects the silos. So the two silos, which are kind of on the north, the large L-shaped barn, and then the little stem off the south, that's kind of what we call the one main building.
Okay.
And then the building on there that's listed, I think it says either garage or greenhouse. That's the other one that's requesting the rustic structure. And so those would be the technically two, even though they're kind of pieces, rustic structures. And then the other ones that are remaining, there's one that's listed, I think, as we call it like the eastern barn. It would be kind of that to the east of the main barn.
This thing?
No, that's the house. So just south of that, down that one. Yep, that's technically one of the ones that Brian is requesting to be allowed by right. And then next to that's a 319 square foot shed. That's another one by right. So those two are allowable based on their size, no matter what.
So, and I'm assuming these two are newer?
Brian, the eastern barn and that shed, the two you want to keep by right, are those newer than the other ones?
So one is the original milk house, which is attached to the pole barn, which your arrow's on right there, it's attached to it. It's not, this
Oh, that's that shed.
if the building comes through, that's the original milk house, probably built in about 1910, 1920. That was part of that story, that it started there, and then they attached it to the main barn on the side of it. And that was all, that one building.
Is that other one, the eastern one, the one that's like 3,800 square feet, is that newer?
1967.
So it's ancient. That's the year I was born. Well,
Could you use your cursor again? Some of those aren't. Explain again the locations and the
Yeah, so this main
ages too.
L-shaped one here,
Yeah.
that's kind of the main big barn you see in the photos, the one that really has the stature to it. That's kind of connected on the corner then here to this smaller feature.
Yeah.
And then there is connections to these two silos you see here. So that's what we're all calling the main barn, which those all total 8,223 square feet.
Got it, okay.
So that's kind of item one they're requesting. And then this building here, which the survey list is garage, but it was the old grain house.
Yes.
That's 656. That's the other rustic structure. So you can kind of say the rustic structure ones are kind of more glumped on the left side or the west side.
Okay.
And then these two here, this bigger one here and this smaller one off of it, these are the ones that are not requesting to have rustic structure, but are saying, hey, those are under the 2% I'm allowed. That's kind of the way the request has been made.
Okay, okay,
Although we could enter those into our conversation.
right.
I don't like tearing down old barns. I mean, we're not building new ones. I like the history of it. I understand the compactness and the choices that were made on this lot. I'm kind of wondering the two that are by right. (1967), it doesn't, I mean, it's got some history. It's not a, unless it's got four wheels and a Hemi in its side. It's not a,
Yeah.
That's right.
Of course, the main barn also has a Hemi in it now. It's not the old building that it was once built. It is, it's a newer building now. So if this were brought into compliance, what buildings could remain?
If the rustic structure wasn't granted, they would max out at 4,196, which simple would be those two that are allowed by right, we'll call it, the two easternmost buildings. Those would be within that. I mean, way it would work is if they don't get rustic structure designation, the code says there's a square footage they're allowed, which is the 4,196, and they can choose how they want to keep that 4,196, whether it's keeping full buildings, partial buildings, whatever. But like those two they want to keep are around 4,100, just a hair over. So that those two, that's kind of why they were deemed by right by the owner as they're within that 2%.
I mean, these buildings won't become tourist attractions, obviously. And because that parcel has been broken up into separate lots, I mean, what's the use of these buildings? Are they going to be storage units or?
The one thing that's in the resolution is that they are not allowed to be used for any kind of business storage, business operations. That is something that is identified in the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
This is a conditional use, correct?
Yes, it is.
So it's a permanent conditional use, it's not annual, or?
It's permanent. You could definitely put an annual review on it. I think, we don't have it written this way, but I believe that some of the other ones, because they did need a little TLC, some of the other buildings we've done this for before, did have like an annual review for the first few years to make sure that they were kept up. I think there was worry on some of the other ones, would they fall into dilapidation after they got that granting, and none of the other ones did. I know that there were some TLC items that had to be done on some of the other ones that took them a year to do, but none of those currently have like an annual review. I don't know why you couldn't. I'm not aware of a legal reason why you couldn't set a sunset to say, hey, in so many years we're going to revisit this. I know with zonings you can't have them time-based.
Correct.
But a conditional use grant, you can impose any reasonable condition, I think is how the statutes read, that you would want.
I saw a number of pictures in the packet. Cows and equipment and stalls, a lot of things. What is the current use? What are you doing with it now?
Right now there's cows.
There's cows in it. Your cows?
No.
Okay. And
Yeah, the King family utilize them.
Okay. But they're currently active with housing cows, if not. Are you putting hay up above or anything like that? All right.
And you have some personal belongings in some, right? Is that what we've talked about?
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't see this as a tourist attraction where people are going to come and say, oh, there's a barn.
Maybe they
Although
should.
one of
Maybe
these
they
days, someone's going to say, what is a barn? But aside from that, I just think it does add to the culture of the community. I mean,
Does it have any signage on the outside? It's, you said the main barn was 1880?
About 1890.
1890. Anything to state that?
No, I can get the tax records.
No, I'm not asking that question. You know, very often you see, Century Farms, and they'll put something up on the
I
outside
think the
of it.
Kurth Farms got.
The Kurth Barn, I think, does that.
Kurth has it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I drove by that just the other day. What prevents you from doing that?
What I would like to do, honestly, that I think would be decent for everybody, is the three families that had owned it in all the years of its existence.
All right,
Now, I didn't mention that in there, in the back.
yeah, okay.
I don't remember the spelling of the first name, obviously the second one was George Stoneheim, who bought it in 1933, and me, I bought it in 2000.
My inclination is, if you're gonna sell it as a historic building, make it a historic building. And I'm not exactly sure, what the ramifications from the city standpoint is, and maybe they don't have any, but, I'm a lot more sympathetic to that than the idea that it just stands. Because I love the architecture. I like the idea.
I don't understand what you wanted.
Some
kind of signage that would just say that,
So you gotta sell me on the idea that this historic building stands. And if I took my how old is he? 35-year-old kid, son that drove by here and he grew up in Muskego, he wouldn't know the difference.
Right.
He'd have nothing, he wouldn't understand it. So I have a lot of farm friends that are, they're doing a little farming in Muskego. If they drove by they'd know Wayne, but I don't know if they know anything about the building. They probably do, but how would they tell their kids?
So what about what I mentioned before in the public hearing? I would love to write up something like that, present it to the Historic Society, get every bit of pictures. The other thing I did with Wayne's cell phone, I knocked on the door, Wayne, I know about pain in the rear. Do you have any pictures of the barn way back? I do have some old pictures that he had. I would love to show all that and give it to the Historical Society. And Adam, you can bring it up again like this, but I had mentioned that I thought that there was, when we did this rustic structure building.
Sir, if we're gonna have this, you gotta come up to the microphone, so, sorry.
That I would be almost obligated, but I mean, I'd ask right now to show it. And again, you had mentioned too about show it to the public. One day a year. I don't know where this came from. I thought I had heard this a while ago, but one day a year to actually show it. And yes, you'd have to have insurance and stuff for walkthroughs.
You don't want to.
I like the idea.
Well, you mentioned historic and showing it.
I like the idea, but I'm not sure if you're ready for it.
Oh, I get it. I mean, we'll schedule or something like that, but I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I know.
All right,
I
don't want to, yeah.
Okay, he asked about this stuff.
No, I know, that's fine, I get that.
Explaining it, showing it, and coming up with something.
I think he got his answer. We just need to talk amongst ourselves a little more, so, thank you.
Yeah, I think so.
Jeremy, what are your thoughts?
Definitely on the fence on this one. Yeah, I get the idea of the historic preservation of it. I feel like there really hasn't been a strong plan brought forward in regard to what the historic preservation and long-term plan of this is, other than, hey, it's a barn, I'd like to keep it. I mean, if you were building a subdivision around the idea of an agrihood, this would have been a really cool use. And I don't know if you know what an agrihood is, but...
I don't, so inform me.
Okay, so a subdivision built around the idea of a mini farm. There's one out in Muskego. Mm-hmm. And that'd be something I'd strongly support here, and I think a lot of people in Muskego actually would be excited about the idea. So basically that idea is you maybe this would be an outlot to the rest of this development and be looked at that way. Obviously, I'm speaking way out of turn, but just me personally, that's something I'd strongly support, and I think it would fit with the flavor of the idea. Right now, where it sits, I definitely would want to put timeline contingencies on it as a conditional use grant. I feel like I've seen barns degrade over time and things fall apart. And I could see us going 15, 20 years down the road and this becomes unsightly and a blight, and the neighbors start complaining about it. Oh, raccoons are in my garbage again because the neighbor doesn't maintain his barn, things like that. So right now, I guess that's where I'm leaning. I'm leaning towards either a better plan historically, or with some long-term planning, or some strong contingencies. Otherwise, I couldn't support this.
So, as I spoke earlier, I don't like the idea. I mean, I understand the historical significance of the building is gone, but we're also not building new barns anymore. I think there's way too many outlots on this building on this property overall. You could sell me more on let's keep the barn and get rid of, the what's deemed the machine shed and the shed, that. I'd be more amicable to. Timeframes, I agree with you, Jeremy. It's a concern of mine. We have an old feed store that's been bought and nothing much going with it, and it's created a rodent problem in parts of the city. Mr. Wren might be the best maintainer of this property, but he could get hit by a train tomorrow and sell the property, and what this conditional use goes with the property. So you have to look at it, and what's the long-term future. Next property owner, you could sell it. Next property owner could try doing an underground storage facility here. It's not allowed, but things end up in people's garages, and rents are charged all the time on things that are underground economy. So I have to, it's a tough one.
May I propose that?
Please.
that we defer tonight's action, but that we ask the gentleman to come back with a proposal, recognizing that the number of square feet is so far exceeds the rule that there's got to be some give. Okay, that's number one. And I can't tell you what. If the main barn is the most important of both your personal objectives and the historical objectives, I can't judge that. I don't know how to, I can't take Sharpie and put my notes on here. So I'd say propose that, and I'd also say show in some means the historical significance, so we can all agree that we're saving an old building and we're having a little bit of posterity recognized for the city of Muskego.
So is that a motion to defer?
That's a motion to defer.
And I would second that.
All those in favor of the motion to defer, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's deferred unanimously, and I'll just add an editorial onto it. You didn't have the votes tonight for this, so this deferral actually gives you some light. Mm-hmm. So we'll have some discussions either tomorrow or offline and give you some direction. Okay?
Yeah, I have to take off.
All right. Moving on, Resolution PC 034, 2023, recommendation to the Common Council to amend the zoning map and 2020 comprehensive plan of the City of Muskego for PJ's Trucking 2 LLC located at South 99 West 12707 Loomis Drive, tax key number 22609980002.
Move to approve. I'll second.
Discussion. Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just pulling up my document here, but this item went to public hearing at the last Common Council meeting. It's for rezoning from a commercial zoning to a lighter industrial zoning for a future trucking site. The code technically calls it a trucking terminal on the property that was the location of Durham Hill Nursery. The nursery is still kind of active in the front of the property, but more so less retail and more site type work. And then PJ's Trucking purchased the property, and they're looking at locating on the back of the property, really just a gravel lot for truck parking is the best way to word it. While this area currently isn't zoned for that industrial, as we mentioned, it's surrounded by area that the future land use plan does call for some kind of possible industrial uses, just given this is in fairly close proximity to the landfill, which is not a location maybe a lot of businesses or people want to be. So it's kind of a good to have a use that's not picky about where they're located, be closer to the landfill. There also is along with the truck parking that would be on this site, they are working with engineering. They are going to have proper stormwater management. So even though it's going to be a site, they are proposing to have a stormwater pond in the southwest corner, which is being vetted. And then there is one area shown just north of those ponds that would have some possible outdoor product storage. And what I mean by that is, as part of the business, they may haul gravel or recycled asphalt or products, aggregates like that. And if there is excess product, they commonly will store it there and either use it on their job or whatever. So there is a designated area for outdoor material storage. There are restrictions in the resolution as to how high that storage can be. So we're not going to have some 50-foot tall mound of gravel or something. It's pretty limited. And really everything you really see from predominantly the road on the north side is really pretty hidden. The existing buildings and landscape do a pretty good job of concealing what's in the back. There are a few things stored out there already, which was allowed by the city, but this is for more of the full-blown plan now. And as part of this, the next item on the agenda is the actual building site and operation plan that goes with it. So I'm kind of speaking for this item as well as the next. There is a future building that they're talking about putting on site for truck maintenance, but that would need a separate approval when that would come through. They do show an area of berming with that has been talked about, landscaping kind of in the northwest corner to make sure that anything that is screened or anything that is in the back of the site would be further screened. So they do have a berm proposed. We would just want to see some landscaping on that. And the resolution in the next item for the BSO does mention that on the kind of south side and the southeast side, where there's some open field space by adjacent properties, that if those adjacent properties were ever to develop, at that time we would require PJ's Trucking to screen. We're not going to make them screen now because he's screening a field. We don't think that's fair. But if other users were to come on any of those sites, we would require screening at that time at PJ's expense. Otherwise, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning and land use amendment, which would then go to Common Council next Tuesday, as well as for the next item, item 35, we're recommending approval of the building site and operation plan subject to the conditions in the resolution.
Thank you. Discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Resolution PC 035-2023, approval of a building site and operation plan for PJ's Trucking 2 located at South 99 West 12707 Loomis Drive, tax key 22609980002.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
I imagine there's nothing new to add from what you just said. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Resolution PC 036-2023, recommendation to the Common Council to amend the zoning map and 2020 comprehensive plan to the City of Muskego for Burback Builders for the Iron Oaks Villas proposed condominium development located on vacant land west of Country Club Lane, tax key number 22589960006.
Go ahead. Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion, Adam?
So this item also goes along with the next item. So 36 and 37 are similar. 36 is for the rezoning and land use amendment, and 37 is for the building site and operation plan. So when it relates to the rezoning, right now this area is split zone. Part of it is RM1 multifamily residential district, which is our most intense residential multifamily district. And then a small little frontage of the property is zoned B4, which is our highway business district. That's a real small strip that was based upon an old plan that never panned out. The request is to rezone it to RM3 multifamily residence. This is our least intense multifamily district. It says that each unit needs at least 10,000 square feet of land, and it limits the building sizes to 2 units, or like duplex style, even though it's a big condo, 2 units per building. The comprehensive plan is being amended from high density residential and commercial to medium density residential, based on the submittal, which basically you can make a case to say they're down zoning it, but it works with the proposal. So it made sense to have that as part of the request. As part of this zoning here, and I want to correct myself, it's a planned development rezoning based on that RM3 district. So with the planned development, the developer can have a little flexibility with zoning requests. It's very common for condos to be in planned development zonings. They don't have to be, but with the whole zero lot line scenario, it makes a lot of sense. As well as in this case, the applicant is requesting a 30-foot setback from the right-of-way instead of a 40-foot setback. That was something that staff talked with them on, and this area, if you'll see in the aerial photography, is pretty heavily wooded, and with the wooded portions of the lot, it's shown in our conservation plans as higher conservation priority. Our city forester has walked the site, and there's a lot of really good older oaks there and other vegetation. So that being the case, we want to try to keep larger contiguous areas together for woodlands. And so the thought was pushing the units a little closer to the road, hence the 10-foot proposed reduction of the setback. That was kind of a city suggestion to minimize the impact to that to the tree area. Now this is for a total of 18 units in 9 buildings, 2 units per building, like I mentioned. Overall density wise, it's well under the density that's allowable under the plan, even with that down zoning that they're asking for. And there was a public hearing for this held at last council meeting on May 23rd. The city received a handful of people that did speak at that meeting. There was a handful of comments, a couple things that are in the supplement, which I'm sure you read, but there was some questions relating to, proximity of where these are to the golf course, as the golf course kind of just will be on the north end of these units. There were some questions about balls hitting houses, which our kind of answer to that was that we require any windows that face the course to be tempered glass. There was some question about a land transfer that is unrelated to this that wasn't shown on our mapping, and I believe that's being looked at by the parties that were involved in the purchase and sale, but that wouldn't have any involvement in the rezoning request. There were some comments relating to some drainage issues with the pond that's north of this, which has been brought to our engineer's attention and something they will look into further if necessary. But all the new development runoff will be handled in storm sewer, which will go to a stormwater pond, which would be on the very far southern end of the site, kind of serving as like an entry feature to the development. So it'll be just west of the main driveway. As far as road construction, there were some questions because there will have to be some construction to this roadway. So this was a newly improved right-of-way roadway for Country Club Drive. The first lift of asphalt was done, but not the second. That was intentional because they like to let it settle a little bit. And then once this project kind of came to light, we definitely don't want them putting the second lift on because with the sewer installation per the city engineering and utility department, they are requiring that the sewer go in the roadway. Meaning there would have to be some tear up of it, so there would be some impact. But the contractors would obviously have to be cognizant because this is the only public road to get to the golf course, and we can never force anyone to go through a private condo road, that they would have to keep the road open at all times, even though it might be flagged or whatever for a limited period of time while they'd be doing the sewer work. The water line, though, is allowed to be out of the roadway. And that was per the engineering and utility departments. So there could obviously be some impact to the business and things like that, but hopefully it will be over a short period of time and the contractors can work with that business to minimize any temporary delays. There were some concerns brought up regarding the tree removal. One of the suggestions at the meeting, actually I think they came up by more than one person at the public hearing, was the idea, what if we move these units back into the woods more and basically do like a separate frontage road. And I think the benefit then that was mentioned by some of the people that spoke was the idea that we won't have as many driveways onto the city road then. And the idea that it would kind of keep a tree-lined feel to the road. The concern with that is if our goal is tree preservation, by doing that, you're just moving the disturbed trees and then you're actually widening the disturbance path because not only are you clearing for the driveways in the homes, you're also clearing for that frontage road now. Then you run into a lot of risk of tree damage due to construction traffic, root cutting, that there's a good chance that the trees you save may not be saved. And really, it's really just a much larger footprint impact to the woods area, which is something we were trying to avoid. There were some concerns about parking brought up. As far as parking goes, each of the units will have at least a 30-foot setback, so it's a 30-foot driveway, plus about 15 feet off the edge of the road. So that would give you about a 45-foot long typical driveway, 2 cars wide, which then would give you enough for at least 4 cars, if not more. And then the garages can fit, I believe it's 2 to 3 cars. I think they're too wide and kind of a little bit deeper. So there's more than an ample parking per our code requirements on street and off-street parking and enclosed. This would be just a typical city road, just like any other road. We have many roads in the city that have driveways on them like this. We have many roads in the city that have on-street parking. One question related to parking, and that's something we talked about with Public Works and Safety, our Public Works Department. They stated that we wouldn't sign it no parking right off the bat. They typically only do no parking signage once there's a problem. So if a problem would come down the road with parking on the road, Public Works and Safety could definitely address it at that time, but it would be like any other normal street that you can typically park on. There were some questions about HOA rules and that there is a neighboring condo development to the east, and would those neighboring condo rules also be the same here? We advise those residents that we can't control the HOA condo rules, but we encourage them to talk with the Burbacks, the applicant, to see if they're willing to have some similar rules, specifically relating to like business operations and outdoor parking and such. And then, let's see, I think that covers the bulk of the items. Yeah, so that covers the comments from the public hearing. The applicant, like I said, as you see on the packet included, shows architecture of the buildings too. This did come for a conceptual discussion, as you probably remember, in front of the Plan Commission a few months ago. At that time, the Plan Commission seemed pretty receptive to this idea, so it's very similar to what you saw then. We did talk about upping some of the masonry material percentages, which they did do. We talked about the back being less of a concern, so the back has a lower percentage, but they definitely upped the fronts and the sides, and I think the buildings look really nice, and you'll see the renderings in there. This is an example with these condos. We focus more on the overall design characteristics than a strict masonry number. So while the back is lower, everything else is really beefed up. So staff is recommending approval for the rezoning and land use amendment, which would go to the next common council meeting. And we are recommending approval for the building site operation plan based on the approval subject to conditions in the resolution.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from anyone?
I have no problem with the rezoning or the comprehensive plan, but unlike other city streets, there's a destination at the end of this street, and that's a golf course.
There's not going to be parking on the street.
And, well, I'm concerned about 13 driveways, in addition to the driveways from the development to the east of that. And there is a destination, and that is a golf course that's quite busy, that also has banquet facilities. So unlike a normal city street, this isn't a normal city street.
I would think that if someone were to run traffic numbers, this will have significantly less traffic, even with the banquet traffic, than Landon, which has driveways all up and down on it, as an example. Landon's like, I think, a collector arterial. This won't even be considered that. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you're not correct, but if parking would become the sole issue on the road, that's obviously a topic that can be discussed.
Yeah, I think that would be a higher risk than we'd want to consider, to be personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't support having parking. I wouldn't support having parking on the road. The driveway thing, I understand your concerns on, but Adam's point is extremely valid. That even at their busiest times, we've got streets that have more driveways coming out onto them that are much busier than this is ever going to be.
Well, what about sightlines? So I truly understand and applaud the idea of retaining all the let's say the desirable trees that are there, but I take it we'll have some overview as to sight lines associated with those driveways and the tree cover?
Well, the bulk of the front yards will have to be cleared. By the time you do your driveways, water laterals, sewer laterals,
it will go through everything.
The plan does show little bits of preservation in the front. Okay. I love the idea. From a practical standpoint, I'll be surprised if it really works, just because of the grading and everything associated with it. If you're going to have anything left in front, maybe you have a few just amazing big trees if you're lucky. But I think that's hopeful thinking.
Once you start cutting through the root systems of these.
Oh, sure.
The predominant preservation is behind. These are units for people that don't want a backyard. Someone says, I want a nice big backyard like you'd find in the development to the east, then you should be looking to the east and not here. These are people that want to look out their back patio or porch or whatever, and maybe they have a small grass area, and then there's the trees or the course.
Yeah, that'd be my only concern of all those driveways going onto that road, is that maybe a little speed issues, enjoying a few too many pops at night, and you have sightline issues. So if if that's going to be resolved by just construction, I'm okay.
And I guess I would be remiss in not pointing this out again. This is really almost dezoning of the property. I mean, current rights can be much more dense and evasive than what is being proposed here. Okay. So doing nothing doesn't stop development here.
Surface water issues are going to be resolved.
Yeah, I mean, when I brought forward Scott to some questions that were brought up regarding the pond having drainage issues, he's never heard that from anyone before. So if there's issues, they should definitely be talking to Scott about the other development, but that should have no bearing on this. Okay. And this development are subject to all normal MMSD stormwater rules and DNR. So MMSD storm rules are one of the most strict in the state. They're going to be subject to these rules here. So MMSD and DNR will both be vetting their stormwater plans, and they are proposing a decent sized pond in that southern portion of the property.
Okay.
Jeremy, anything?
Nope, I have no issues. We looked at this once before, and looks good to me. I'm glad they stuck with the brick requirements and didn't try to reduce on that because we talked about it. Other than that, I thought we were all pretty much on the same page when it came in previously.
Thank you. All right, further discussion? Is hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to resolution, where am I at?
So that was 36, so 37.
It was 37. Resolution PC 037, 2023, approval of building site and operation plan for Burbach Builders for the Iron Oaks Villas condominiums located on a vacant property west of Country Club Lane, tax key number 2258996006.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion, this is obviously the discussed.
This is more the site and architecture part.
Yeah.
Any further?
I'm good.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Resolution PC 038, recommendation to the Common Council, PC 038, 2023, recommendation to the Common Council to rezone one property from B2 Local Service Center District and 3 properties from RS2 Suburban Residence Districts to PD 45 Inpro Planned Development District, and approval of a building site and operation plan for Inpro Corporation located at South 80 West 19025 Janesville Road, South 79 West 18997 Janesville Road, South 79 West 18975 Janesville Road, and South 79 West 18953 Janesville Road, with various tax keys numbers that are listed in the resolution.
Good job. Good job.
It's good enough for a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. So this request, like the mayor stated, is for rezoning and a buildings and operation plan. This is land that there's 4 lots right now that are owned by the Impro Corporation or some grouping thereof. And basically, to give you perspective on Janesville Road, they have their large headquarter office building that's located on the corner. The next building to the east would be the vet clinic, which that's the private ownership. And then the next 4 lots between the vet and the car wash would be the lots in question here. So what they're looking at doing is rezoning, and the purpose to start would be basically for 140-ish car parking lot. They're planning on doing some additions to their main building to the south, which is talked about later tonight. But in part of the prep for that, they want to make sure they have enough parking for their employees as they continue to be growing as a company too. So they are proposing taking these lots that they have. They are planning on keeping up right now Muskego Carts, which is located in that area. So Muskego Carts is a tenant of theirs, and the Muskego Carts is going to stay a tenant at this time, as well as there are a few homes on the property. I believe the last I heard, 2 of the 3 homes were coming down, but are they all 3? One's coming down and 2 staying up, or are they all 3 staying up? One will come down. Okay, so the other 2 will follow once. Okay, so yeah, the house immediately east of Muskego Carts would be removed, and then the easternmost two would stay for now, kind of as what we call phase one. And really phase one's what our approvals for today. They're working with the county to go ahead and get all their approvals, or shortly after this to get their approvals for access, as this is a county highway. The county has told them they want just one access point. I think there was originally talk about doing two, and the county, I think, told them they're only allowing one, so they're working with the county to get that approved. But basically, right now, it's just a larger parking lot. They are curbing the portions of it that don't have future expansion, and we told them that they don't have to curb the sides that do have future expansion, so that when it's expanded down the road with phase two, they don't have to worry about ripping that curbing out. The resolution does have some notes about some landscape island requirements, which are conditions of approval in there. They would be doing stormwater management on the far southeast corner of the site as part of this first phase. And when we say first phase is just the parking. Phase two, which the hope we've heard is in the next 2 or so years, 2 to 3 years, would be to remove the other buildings on site potentially, at least some of the other buildings on site, and go ahead and build a larger building with a larger parking lot. So they're looking at building a future separate office building. That would be though a phase two plan, which is not part of this approval, but something to keep in mind for the perspective that we have out there now. So staff is recommending approval. Like I said, it's really a parking lot only at this time, but they are asking for the plan development zoning district because they are having one lot with multiple things kind of going on that lot with the different zonings and stuff that are with the zonings that were there and the different homes. So they'll have 2 homes, a business, and a parking lot. Staff's recommending approval. It's pretty straightforward.
Questions, comments? Editorialize on the county with their one access when
I just have
4. Yes.
the question just regarding, so timing, I'm hearing 2 houses stay, but this will be all one plan development lot, that's correct?
Yeah, the next item on the agenda, which I guess I can go through now, these dual things, is actually a certified survey map to combine the lots and then dedicate the proper right-of-way along Janesville Road. So yeah, they will be combined to one lot, which the plan development zoning allows multiple different uses on one property. That's why they're asking for that. And as part of it, one thing I forgot to mention is this is a large section of vacant trail right now. There, as part of this, the resolution states that as part of the parking lot build out, they would continue that trail from Warrior Wash to the west. Now, once they hit the vet clinic, they don't have the rights to that, but in the conversation actually this week with the vet clinic owner, it sounds like he may be willing to talk with them about getting an easement or something, as long as he's not paying for the trail connection. So maybe there's ability to have some connection sooner than later. We'll have to see.
That would be good. All right. Further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Resolution PC 039-2023, approval of a certified survey map for Impro Corporation located at the previous mentioned resolution 038-2023.
Yeah, as I mentioned, same thing.
We need a motion first.
Move to approve. I'll second.
Yeah, so just combining the lots.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Resolution PC 040-2023, approval of a building site and operation plan for Impro Corporation located at South 80 West 18766 Apollo Drive, tax key number 2225090.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, he is there. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So as I alluded to before, this is for the warehouse addition to kind of the west edge of their main building, which is across the bike path from the previous talked about properties. They have an existing building that's obviously one of their main warehouse and manufacturer areas, and they're looking at adding just a little over 18,000 square feet to the north side of the westernmost building. It's a pretty straightforward plan. As far as design of the building goes, it is going to look like the existing building. When it's all said and done and painted and materials is going to look like the existing building. They are doing some changes to some docks, truck docks, dock stores in a few different spots of that building, really minor in nature, and they're going to be very similar to mirroring what's already there. So the staff does not have any kind of concerns with that. They are losing quite a few parking stalls as part of this, but hence that's why they're doing the parking lot partially to the north, as well as there is a small area kind of just off the northeast corner of the addition where they are doing a few additional surface stalls to just kind of keep some parking where they can. So if we think the parking, what they're adding is more than what they're removing, So that should not be a problem. We just have a few notes in the resolution relating to some parking stall size requirements and, offsets from lot lines and things like that. They are showing a one-way drive behind that north side of the building. We're just making a note that paving has to be 12 feet clear. They are showing some small awnings off the back of the building, and as long as those are 2 feet or less, they'll give them 12 feet clear. So that's one of the concerns they have to meet per the code. Originally, the plans that we received, the engineering plans, did show concrete curbing along the north edge of that northern driveway. And talking with the applicants, and after they reviewed the supplement, I guess that was an error, and they're not intending to show curbing on the back of the property. But one of the things that we mentioned to them, and as of now is worded in the resolution, as we typically do anytime there's new paving or redoing of paving or expanded paving, we typically require curb and gutter, especially in a more developed area like this. So the resolution currently does state that any new paving or redone paving in that back area, including the parking area, would need to have curb and gutter, and the applicants may talk about that. As far as another item we mentioned is there are currently 2 dumpsters that are facing the road side of the property. Something that I guess I'll honestly say I don't know how they were approved back then, because it's something usually the Plan Commission is real cautious on, but it is what it is. They are relocating them to the northeast corner of the building, so we commend them for that. That definitely is a much nicer position. They're kind of out of sight, but once again, just trying to be property consistent. And I knowing that the plan for their parking lot does include removing a lot of trees there, so I don't know what the view will be from Janesville Road or if you're on the bike trails. So there was a staff suggestion to either add some kind of decorative wall feature or more economically add some landscaping on the north side of the drive adjacent to those dumpsters. If they do the landscaping route, a much cheaper impact than doing a wall feature, which would just give it some breakup. But we are happy they are moving them, so we definitely appreciate that one. Other than landscaping for maybe that, we have noted that there is a transformer that the construction plan shows being relocated, so we'll just need to know where that's going, and wherever it ends up, we do want to have it screened in some form, so we'll have to review that. That's kind of standard for any site where they do transformer relocations or new locations. As far as any kind of lighting, everything's going to have to meet our city requirements. There is currently an easement shown that kind of runs through the building. What we have listed in there is we'll just need some kind of written proof that that easement has either been removed or vacated, or that the utility company is allowing them to encroach on it. With their building addition, we would just need that before we would go ahead and review the building permit. No signage or anything is proposed at this time, but if they want to change anything up, we can obviously review that at the Plan Commission stage. Otherwise, staff is definitely recommending approval.
Questions, comments? Does petitioner want to add something?
Hi, my name is Ken Cray with MSI General, representing the development. And as Adam said, I appreciate the descriptions, very accurate. A couple of items that we would like to ask for, waivers on would be the curb and gutter on the east side of the property. It's currently not there. It's really not essential other than maybe from an aesthetics perspective. And we would just like to, maintain the consistency of the current driveway that's back there. And so, yes, it'll be redone with new asphalt, but we are, again, asking for a waiver on that curb and gutter. And then the second item is the screening. They're actually compactors. They're fully enclosed, fully sealed. They're not, dumpsters or open dumpsters per se, where items could be strewn about or blowing around there. And there is a grade difference between the two properties where the future parking lot is. And so there is some partial screening that's going to naturally occur anyways. And so again, we're asking for a waiver on that screening of those future compactors. Again, we did strategically put them in a pretty concealed area to try to avoid that in the future. And so again, we would respectfully ask for a waiver on those two items. So.
And what's the location of those compactors? Can you show me?
Aaron will pull up the plan here. They are definitely in the back corner. Aaron, where Aaron's putting the cursor right now on the screen. Yep. That's where they're going. So they are on like the west facing side now. They'll be more east facing. So they're definitely tucked behind the building. And the building screens them on the west, the south. You really don't see them on the east. The only question that we had originally was on the north side.
Which would be the bike path.
Or Janesville Road possibly.
Yeah, just because I looked at when you look at the plan, the engineering plan for the parking lot property, they have a tree removal plan, and it does show the trees being removed all the way to the lot line. So I guess that's all I could base my decision off of, that if it is a clear view from Janesville Road, typically we made some people do some pretty extensive screening that I would think some landscaping here might be a minimal request.
What's the main concern? Just cost of screening or?
Yeah, I guess we kind of view it as unnecessary just because it's all.
I think it'd be accessible by anybody that's conceivably walking the bike path.
I mean, they'd be trespassing, so they shouldn't be.
They would be, you're right.
I mean, they are right now. They're no different. They will be more accessible in the future than they are currently.
Okay.
Correct. And again, they're not open at all. They're fully enclosed, they're fully concealed, compacting systems. And so, so there's really, I mean, could someone get in there and tamper with them in some way, shape, or form? They could, but again, it's a very, very low risk.
Boss wants to talk.
Sorry.
I'll add to it. Craig Faust with Impro. So we strategically located them back there, one for the purpose of screening from the driveways. Obviously, where they're currently located is somewhat of an eyesore. When you look at it, as compactors get older, they rust and different things like that. We're very aware of that. So that's part of the reason why I had them move back there. Also, where we're asking for the forgiveness of the screening is not just from the cost, but when the dump trucks drive back there, it's the maneuvering back in that section. We've got the one way. So Adam, to your point, adding a few little trees or landscaping once we're done to see where the driveway from Janesville, if you can even see it, we're wide open to that. I mean, we want to make sure that it looks good, especially from our building, eventually when that's built. But there is, based on the difference of the height of the trail, my guess is some of that trail is going to be the block of it. And there's a lot of weeds that grow up throughout that trail. So we're open to some additional landscaping if necessary. We just don't want to put a concrete structure. The other note that I will make, because you're talking about screening around the power actually needs to move about 4 feet to the west, and it sits on blacktop. So from a screening standpoint, it will be hidden almost by the dumpsters.
So is it going kind of in that little nook where the angle walkway and the buildings combine then?
It's basically, we have to move it because it's right at that corner of
so it will be between the dumpster and the building, is that a way to describe it? So if that's the case, then I don't think it's a worry because, the dumpster is going to be way bigger than the transformer.
Right.
Yeah. So if that's where it's located, then I think that when the permit would come in for the building permit, if you're showing it there, I think we can just waive that as staff because it's not visible then. So I think that's kind of a moot point.
I'm
if that's
okay
where it
with
goes.
both waiting for staff. I mean, I live right there, so I'd have more concerns with a truck backing up numerous different times to try to get in the right angle with the noise going to my house than. Or, I'm sorry, the resident's house, it's not about me.
The beeping.
But if we wait and it shows up that it's an eyesore from Janesville Road, I take them at their word for it that they're gonna make it look
you've
good.
done everything else.
Yeah.
Do we want to just maybe amend it to word it as basically screen if visible from Janesville Road? So that way if it's not, we don't have to worry about it. And if it is, then we cross the bridge then?
Or as necessary.
However you want to word it. I just think that way keeps us all on the same page.
No, that's fine. Where is that on the resolution here? Which line?
Got to pull it up here.
Under the landscaping.
Yeah, and as needed is adequate.
Right.
Right one, yeah.
And the only other comment that I want to add on the curb on the old development, call it the extension, it's down that corridor. It would be very, costly to put that curb all the way down. Plus then when we're plowing through there, it is difficult. So on the new one, we're fine if we have to add the curb and gutter on, on the other parking lot. It's just on the old one, we're asking for the forgiveness.
Yeah. And the only reason we wrote it up that way is we've had people convert a house to a business, for example, and they expanded their driveway to facilitate that. They put curbing in their front yard to facilitate that expanded parking. They didn't have to curb anything they didn't touch, only the stuff they touched. It was just a matter of being consistent.
We're talking the east side of the existing building?
North side, like the bike trail side.
The curb is on east-west.
Correct. And it basically goes straight up.
Yep.
That's up to the planning commission. What do you guys want to do?
Yeah, We're good with that.
I'm good, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeremy?
So we're proposing to make an amendment to both the curbing and the screening?
Yes.
Okay, the screening sound very reasonable. I don't know, curbing, we've been really consistent on, we just put a smaller developer through the ringers on that. So, I don't
Did
know.
we give a waiver to Jewel?
That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
That was because there's no customer use or employee use,
Yeah,
it's just
that was-
passive storage.
Yeah.
I parked by.
The curbing, and this is something more for the record, is that I think a lot of people think curbing, is a stormwater function. We look at it more as an aesthetic. And the biggest thing is you talk about trucks jogging around. A little bump with the curb is a good reminder that, hey, I'm about to go off the road, rather than having that be going off and going into the mud or something like that. And we've seen it be real functional. That's why we ask for it typically.
All right, so I'm still digging around in this resolution.
So
Is
the
there a
1,
pitch-
2, 3,
does that pitch up
fourth line
towards the-
down.
5 down?
What's elevation?
I'm sorry, the next, at the third
between
page, I
the
think, of the
bike
resolution.
path
There's a
and
2, backside maybe
Head
even
to the
there.
end of the back drive.
It's anywhere from 3 feet higher to 6 feet higher towards
Oh,
that.
okay. So
The bike trail's higher.
yeah.
It goes up.
Yeah.
You'd have quite an elevation change there.
Yeah, it would be all reject curb, so it's
So-
not keeping it on the property. The asphalt does that itself.
Right, right.
Like I said, we're not asking for stormwater, so the idea of reject or not goes
Why don't we break this
away.
into 2 motions? So if you're okay with the curbing, make a motion, we'll vote on that one for the first one, and then we'll talk about the screening second.
Okay. Okay, my motion is that we not require the curbing on the north side of the building from east to west.
And just one discussion point, just to make sure, so this was all existing, doesn't have curb now, and essentially you're asking, kind of keep it that way.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Second.
Not new.
Discussion, any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All right, and then the other one was the
Screening
the
as
screening of the
needed.
dumpster. We'll change that to screening as needed. To screening as needed, is that what you want, Adam?
I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
As long as we all work together, it'll be easy.
You want to make that motion?
You need a motion for that. My motion is to alter make an amendment to change it to screening as necessary
For the dumpster.
For the dumpster.
Or compactor, same.
Dumpster.
Yeah,
the
compactors,
Dumpster
excuse me.
slash compactor.
The 2 compactors.
Yeah, and the.
This is for staff, this is for
Transformer.
staff's ability to,
Yes.
okay.
Staff's ability to work with them.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Got everything you need so far?
Yes,
Is there any other
thank you very
changes?
much.
All right.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the resolution as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right. Any miscellaneous business? None?
No July meeting.
No July
And
meeting,
we'll be
yes.
back in August.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn would be in order?
So moved.
Second.
Baki draw. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 7:28.